I was listening to some podcasts and they read these, they have sponsors. Everybody has sponsors. I think, why don't we have sponsors? We should have sponsors for camp. So I went to ChatGPT looking for a fun way to relax and stretch. Get your goat on at Goga, the ultimate goat yoga experience. Imagine doing yoga with adorable goats hopping around, giving you playful nudges and bringing the good vibes. Whether you're a seasoned yogi or just here for the laughs, Goga is perfect for everyone. Unwind, bond with nature, and get your zen on with some cute goats. Book your class today at Goga. There's the ad.
Okay. What did you put into ChatGPT to get these?
I don't know.
I think we need to have another conversation about what you're putting into your ChatGPT.
Yeah, I might need some help.
Hey, Loren.
Hello, Kelsey.
Here we are. Another episode. Campus Confidential.
Yeah.
I'm doing great. How are you?
Doing very, very well. Happy to have another episode to share.
Yeah. I think we're on what number? We're making progress. 51, 52. 50s. We're in our 50s.
Yeah. We're in our, oh gosh, that makes me happy.
We are, it makes me happy.
You're not AARP eligible until you're 55 though, so still young.
There's a Kelsey Harmon that's a male that is older that somehow I've gotten mail for years.
Just take the discount.
I know. I'm like, okay. So who is our guest today? Why don't you tell everyone?
Yeah, Solly Fulp, really interesting guy. I know you've known him for some time. I have just met him and really enjoyed spending time with him. Solly has really a long career associated with college athletics, both inside higher education and adjacent to higher education. 15 years at Cal State Sacramento and UC Berkeley in athletics administration. He was the chief operating officer at Berkeley, responsible for facilities, revenue, which I think of in my auxiliaries brain, capital projects, and a bunch of other things. And then now 13 or 14 years with Learfield, which is, for our listeners, you can describe this better than me, but
yeah. So they, I think a lot of people think multimedia rights when they think of Learfield, but they're really a media and technology company that's really building brands and cultivating fans in multiple levels. So they do ticketing, licensing, multimedia rights, NIL, as Solly talks about. So it's a multifaceted branding company working with college athletics.
He's executive vice president for Learfield for about 6 years, I think it is. He oversees the NIL, name, image, likeness program for Learfield and 160 partner institutions, and has also, interestingly, led multimedia rights for the Pac-12 conference and the Rose Bowl. He's faculty member, adjunct or part-time faculty at UC Berkeley Haas School of Business, has a bachelor's degree in English, which you'll hear in this episode, I think, very eloquent in his descriptions of his life and journey, with a master's in administration from Cal State Sacramento. I really enjoyed time with him.
Yeah, he's, so I met Solly back in my UC Berkeley days. He was there in athletics and I was in auxiliaries, and, athletic folks and student affairs, auxiliary folks don't always talk to each other, don't always get along. And, when I came to Cal, we had some mutual connection points back to UNLV. And so we were able to create kind of a quick working relationship between athletics and student affairs, which I think helped us both do things, think differently, bring other resources. And, he's one of those people that has a very big personality, bold. Yeah. You'll hear about that. But he's also, I think sometimes that shadows his thoughtfulness and his intentionality, which I think listeners really get to hear how thoughtful and intentional he is in life.
Yeah, I heard that coming through. And I, just to maybe reassure listeners too, this is not an episode about sports. We almost don't even touch on sports.
I know. He's like, are we going to talk about this? I'm like, no, we're probably not talking about your job.
There's no sports in this. And I love sports. It was really about leadership and life lessons and surprising origins of where he's from and what he's learned and some of the things that have happened that have been tragic and hard along the way. So I really, this deepness that you mentioned, I really appreciate it. And I heard too.
Yeah. And I think it's just a reminder that everyone's going through something somewhere at some time, and we're all connected in some way. And I really appreciate how Solly showed up, and excited for everyone to listen. So how about we take a listen?
Let's do it.
All right. Well, here we are. I think we're going to do this. Another episode of Campus Confidential. Solly Fulp, excited to have you with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Loren, how are you doing?
I am doing great. It's a sunny day and second winter is over.
Is it over? I don't know. It's really cold here today. So, all right. Well, we are in the middle, towards the end, actually, of a season about chapters, leadership chapters, where you're at in your journey. And Solly, as I was thinking about this conversation and what I know about you and your history, I'm interested to start with, tell us how your childhood or how you were raised and brought up really has impacted or set the stage for your leadership journey.
That is a great way to open. There's a lot.
We're just going to jump right in.
Big question.
Yeah.
Why go easy from the start?
Right. So born and raised on an island in Kodiak, Alaska. So the Gulf of Alaska, small fishing community, commercial town. I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so I've got 5 brothers and sisters. My dad was a Parks and Recreation director and worked for the city, and my mom taught. So she was a teacher. And so growing up, I grew up in the gyms and on the fields, helping my dad on the Parks and Recreation side. And he was also a wrestling coach. And so grew up in the mat room and in wrestling, and athletics and education really formed me in a lot of different ways on that island. I had really no interest, though, going to school, or a little bit of interest in college. Growing up, I was really more the impression was I wanted to be a commercial fisherman. And, and, you know, as a little boy, you see the boat owners coming into church wearing their boat jackets, and they were the big deals of the community. And so that left an impression on me. And I was like, I want to be that guy. I want to own a fishing boat. And I have friends that still commercial fish and do that. But the sport of wrestling got me off the island, and I went to Pacific University on a small financial aid wrestling scholarship, and then transferred over to University of Oregon and poured myself into college athletics and being a student athlete in the mat room, and received an English degree because it was convenient and kind of fit my athletic endeavors. But that was my childhood in growing up. Some things that really formed me also while I was, we were poor. We were not, my dad was a city employee, and my mom was a teacher and prioritized raising the family and was substituting, but worked around being a mom first, and then with all of us, and then taught when she could. But we didn't feel poor. Like we were, and I didn't really recognize how much we didn't have on the material things, but how much we had as a family growing up. We were all, if you wanted school clothes, you had to work. And so I did a paper route for 5 years, during my middle school years and my freshman year in high school, which wasn't easy in the environment of Alaska, where I would go
Do you do it on a sled? Like, how does that work?
There were times where I had a pretty big paper route, and it was in the winters, dark and cold. And after going to wrestling practice, I would come home, grab something quick to eat, and then head out for an hour and a half. It was an hour and a half paper route in the cold, and delivering papers, and collecting once a month from your subscribers was, for a junior high kid, was an interesting process too, and knocking on doors and making sure that people paid their bills. But I learned a lot just, walking in the nights and looking up at the stars and imagining what's possible while I was doing this paper route. So that was formative in my early years, which led to, because my parents said, if you want to go to college and you want to wrestle, and the university can't pay for your scholarship, you get a little bit of financial aid, but you're responsible for tuition and fees and how you're going to do this. I had to commercial fish in the summers. And that was the way I was able to pay for school, in going out on a small 45-foot boat with 3 other men in the high seas, and doing that for 3.5 months from June to almost September of every year. I'm very proud that I commercial fished for 7 seasons and learned a lot being out on a boat, and the work ethic and the commitment to the team that was required during those experiences. So I would say, in a roundabout way, Kelsey, how does that all lead to where I'm at now in my career? Higher education and athletics was kind of embedded in me at an early age with my mom and my dad, but also the work ethic that was required, being the son of a city employee and a mom that was raising 6 kids, and being on a small island in Kodiak, Alaska. Like, a lot of value was unlocked in learning work ethic and what resilience is and what hard is, and knowing that you got to work through that stuff.
Really fascinating background and story, Solly. And I'm thinking, so I still identify as a farm kid. I grew up on a farm in northern Michigan, not Alaska, but the winters are pretty long. Lots of 5 a.m. feeding cows kind of thing. And then after school, I'd go to sports and come home. Dad was finishing up the milking. I would, feed the cows at 9 o'clock at night kind of thing. And it really shaped kind of how I think of myself. And when I look at my career, what it taught me. And I'm wondering 2 things about that background. What did growing up on an island in Alaska with that kind of upbringing teach you about leadership? And was there any, part 2, I guess, of this, was there any professional or a personal identity that you had growing up in Alaska that you have shed or has stayed with you despite the career that has opened up, beyond the boundaries of Alaska or the island that you lived on in Alaska? Does that 2 questions?
Yeah, that makes sense, Loren. It's funny. I think I'm doubling down on my identity in Kodiak, Alaska more than ever. I mean, if you ask my Learfield teammates and industry friends, everyone knows I'm from Alaska. I'm very proud of it. Mm-hmm. And I think it originates from exactly what you just said, growing up on a farm. Like, the work ethic and resilience and strength from that small community I'm very proud of it. I mean, there's a lot of bars and churches for a reason in that town. People have died at sea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That I've known. Mm-hmm. I will never forget when I was a greenhorn and I pulled up to the dock, just terrified as a 19-year-old or 18-year-old at the time, right out of high school, not sure what I was going to be able to contribute to the boat that was about to unhitch and go out there, and working with 3 men. And I remember my dad said, figure out what the hardest thing on the boat is that no one wants to do, lean into it and do it. Mm-hmm. And I quickly figured out that pulling the anchor was the job that no one wanted to do. it was usually because we would fish till 1 or 2 in the morning, and then anchor down, and then we were pulling anchor at 4:30, 5 o'clock. So people were getting 3.5, 4 hours of sleep, right? And if you pull anchor, usually it's wet and cold outside. It takes about 10 minutes to pull it up. You got to be focused and do it the right way. So you got to put your rain gear on and go out, pull the anchor. The captain is starting up the engine, and it's not a fun experience. But what it does, it allows your other 2 teammates to sleep, or 2 or 3 teammates to sleep in the bunks while you're pulling the anchor, and then we run out to the fishing grounds. So they all get an extra 45 minutes of sleep, which is gold.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I quickly found by owning that job, it was appreciated by the teammates. It was hard. It was not fun, but the captain respected and counted on me doing it every morning. While we were running out to the grounds, I was making coffee and getting breakfast ready. And so no matter what, the start of every day, I've already contributed to the team in doing something that no one wanted to do. I leaned into it and I owned it and became part of my brand on the boat.
Yeah.
And I would say that's just one example of what I carry today in leaning into my leadership responsibilities. And I think that's been kind of a testament to my career, is not being afraid to do the hard things.
Mm-hmm.
And when you embrace doing the hard things as a leader, a teammate, an employee, it and you own it, it requires a growth mindset. It requires courage. It requires vulnerability, putting yourself out there. And I've learned to be comfortable with all those things. And I'm continuing to work at it to this day. And I would say it's experiences like that that form you as a person.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor for so many things. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about your career path, so you go to college, you graduate college, are you going back to be a fisherman? Do you have a dream for where you want to go from there? What happens next?
Well, it's not over yet. He might still go back to become a fisherman.
That's right.
Oh, I'm for sure thinking he's been on a boat recently. Yeah. So that's not forever a fisherman.
Trust me, I've romanticized it, and I've forgotten all the
I actually sat next to a fisherman on a flight the other day.
Oh, did you?
He was a special one.
They're authentic.
They're real. He had a lot to say. My headphones were not deterring him from the conversation. I was like, "Oh, that's good." No, we're still talking. Okay.
Well, if you're on a boat for 3.5 months with 3 or 4 other dudes, you get pent up and you want to talk to as many people as you can.
He was talking to everyone.
Yeah.
So tell us what you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and it kind of ties into why I'm so passionate about my NIL responsibilities at Learfield now. When I graduated, I was focused on the student athlete aspect of the time commitments of wrestling and the requirements that I had on the wrestling team, but and a little bit of education with my English degree. I didn't appreciate the learning aspects in full until I received my master's degree at Sacramento State. But when I graduated with my undergraduate degree, I remember literally taking my final Spanish exam, walking to the middle of campus and sitting down on a bench and going, "What do I do now?" I had no idea. I didn't put any time, effort, and energy into internships during the summer. I was fishing. Mm-hmm. And then I was coming back to school. And so to your point, Kelsey, I went back to what I knew. I was like, I'm going to get back on the boat, which is what I did. After I graduated from college, I went back up and I fished for a summer to make extra money because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And that's a challenge with many student athletes. that graduate. They're so focused on their athletic endeavors and being the best that they can be on the basketball court or football field or baseball, softball, wrestling mat. It requires a lot of time and attention and focus. What I'm excited about with NIL and connecting student athletes with brands and connecting brands with student athlete influencer marketing opportunities, it provides them and opens up professional relationships with that engagement that they haven't had prior to the NIL era, which started June 1 of 21. And so I'm excited that can kind of unlock micro internships and professional relationships that these student athletes have never had, and I never had. And thus I didn't have any exposure to what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And it was a rough 2.5-year period for me to sell title insurance and work at a senior center recreation facility, which was actually really rewarding. Did that for a summer. But kind of feeling my way around until I realized that college athletics was really formative in my experience from being, transitioning to a young man, going in there as a boy and becoming a man in a lot of different aspects and learning to be a teammate and the work ethic required. I was really passionate and grateful for my student athlete experience at the University of Oregon. So I think that led me back to, with encouragement of some people like my wife, to say, you know what, you're passionate about college athletics. You've always talked about it. There's probably jobs out there in college athletics. And so I literally walked onto the Sacramento State campus, saw a job posting for an events management position, and I met with the athletic director, just scheduled a time and introduced myself, had an informational interview. Judith Davidson came from the University of Iowa, so she had an appreciation for the sport of wrestling. And I was fortunate enough to start off as an events manager in college athletics in 1996. And I've been in college athletics ever since.
Talk about doing the job no one wants to do, events.
Yeah. Setting up tables, breaking things down. Nothing is outside your job description, right?
That's right. Pick up the trash, do all the things. Been there, done that.
Right.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I think the three of us all have, right? Yeah. That's where it all started in different ways. So I think about kind of what you've just been sharing and knowing you in kind of the last, I guess, I don't know, a lot of years now. I feel like you've gone through different iterations of careers or direction that you wanted to go. How have you evaluated along the way? Have they all kind of been incidental like this, or have you taken space and time to think about what roles next, or if it's been intentional once you started at Sac State? What's been the process?
I've always had an interest in seeing a need that needs to be filled. So, for example, when I was at Sacramento State, starting off in events management, we outsourced our sponsorship rights to a company that did a little bit they were disconnected from the athletics department. They did a lot of transactional selling, but I felt like there was a big void in what was possible. And so while I was setting up these events for the year and a half that I was an event manager, I was like, we are missing out on some significant sponsorship opportunities because we're just selling program ads and a couple signs. And there's so many other pieces of value that's being lost in that transaction. And so I went to Judith Davidson and said, can I take this on? I'll be the events manager, but I've got a 90-day plan to go out and reach out to these companies. And will you allow me to do that? And if I do a good job, can we look at transitioning those responsibilities into my job description? So I made a pitch to her. I saw a need and I pitched her and she said, okay, you got 90 days. And I was able to go out and put a banking deal together, a grocery store deal together, a moving and transportation deal, sponsorship together. So there were like 3 or 4 wins. And she was like, okay. And I did that. I did that pretty quickly. And part of the reason why I was able to do that, I got to know and develop relationships in my current role as an event manager with those executives that were attending the game. And so I had some traction and relationships to get started on to make that happen as quick as I did. So I to answer your question, Kelsey, I think I've always just kind of been aware and looking around with a growth mindset. And I have a hard time staying stagnant. I think it scares me a little bit to stay in the same job and be able to predict what you're going to be doing the same time next year. And if there's a rinse and repeat cycle to it, I know that that's important to have consistency to some degree, but it does make me nervous to be in that mode for too long. And so I'm always looking to see where the organization or the university needs help in bringing solutions to the decision makers to say, hey, let me step in and provide value in these ways.
I'm hearing a couple of things here, and let me ask you if this is true, Solly. I'm hearing, so at Sac State, what am I going to do? You walked into an office after seeing some posting and took the initiative to ask about a job. Gutsy for a, not yet careered, early career person. Saw some missed opportunities. I think you said at Sac State with Judith, right? In terms of the relationship and brand connections, took the initiative. You described it as a growth mindset, but I'm wondering if that is true, if that's how you've kind of rolled in your life, been maybe a little too, or a little very assertive to try to find solutions to whatever it is you're facing. And has that ever backfired on you as you've done that too in your career?
So I think just talking through this, Loren, where does that originate to be able to go meet with Judith and have the courage to meet in person and do that, right? And I've done that. It's been kind of a theme of my life.
Yeah.
I think it started back with my paper route days.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it, knocking on doors and asking adults to pay their bills. And literally,
that sounds terrible. It gives me anxiety listening to you say it.
I remember doing it, and it was kind of wild. Where I would come home and tell my parents, like, I knew the houses that you'd hear the TV on and all the lights are on.
They don't answer the door.
And then when I'm knocking on the door, the TV goes off, the lights go down, and I'm knocking.
They crawl on the ground.
And we're playing this game like they're not going to pay me. Like I'm going to have to stay after them and continue to get their $7.50 for the month. And I knew the houses that I had to do that. And it was on me to make sure I reconciled with the paper company every single month. Excuses were not an option. And so I had to, so I think is that courage of like showing up in person and the connection is more important than ever. I was just I did visits at Wisconsin and Ohio State last week. And I'm always reaffirmed that connecting in person always wins the day. It always wins the day. And, we're now post-COVID really tied to our video. And you just miss out on that human connection in person on so many things. And so that has kind of been something that's been really important to me in developing my relationships and making sure. Has it backfired? Absolutely. I know, and my wife says this, and the people that I care about that care about me the most always give me the 360 feedback on like, hey, look, your energy and what you bring to the table, not everyone is able to match that. And you need to have empathy, and you need to have awareness, and you need to be able to adjust. And I think that is something that I've developed and matured at, but it is absolutely backfired on me. I mean, I remember,
me too.
Yeah. I remember, that mindset and energy doesn't always translate well on a college campus.
Mm-hmm.
And navigating the relationships and getting in that political environment. I remember presenting at a university presentation on campus about revenue generation and sponsorship. And I used the word, the analogy that we got to eat what we kill. And Sandy Barber afterwards, the athletic director and my boss at the time, who's amazing, was like, Solly, you can't say that. Let's come up with a different analogy, but eating what you kill to the audience that you were talking to,
Solly, I've used it. I was in auxiliaries and, if we don't sell food, we don't have a budget. And I've used that exact phrase and been counseled exactly there's a lot of ways you can describe auxiliary life.
Right.
You don't have to use that phrase.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't need to be a lion and a gazelle, but we don't need that right now. Right.
Well, I was hypothesizing back to the identity growing up. My father used to say, necessity is the mother of invention. It'd be a Sunday. Something's broken. You got to figure it out. It's, I grew up with this, and I sort of was hearing a little of this, and you have to do it yourself. You have to go solve the problem. You have to find a solution. If that one's closed, then you go that way, And so I wondered, in your paper route and your upbringing, it sounds like it has been influential, and to the way you roll.
Loren, it's been a strength, but it has been an impairment at times. Like in the wrestling mat, if you go out on the wrestling mat, you're going up against your opponent. There's no teammates to make an excuse. The full accountability is on you to win or lose that match, right? Mm-hmm. So that mindset of do it yourself, it's on you, certainly got me far. Mm-hmm. But it also impaired me in some ways where I wasn't comfortable asking for help.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I've learned to develop that muscle, and how important it is to have the courage and vulnerability and confidence to ask for help or say, I need a lifeline. Not just professionally. I mean, I'll open up here. There was, and I think Kelsey, you and I talked a little bit about this, and I talk about this every semester with my class that I teach with the students, because, at UC Berkeley, you've got high performers that put a ton of pressure on themselves, that mental health and anxiety and all of that is something that needs to be talked about. And I, in 2016, when I got off the track to be an athletic director for a couple of different reasons, I went through a bout of depression that was for about a year and a half. And I wasn't until I got comfortable asking for help and reaching out and talking to someone. I was in a dark place, and I had some tough times, and I share that because, there are a number of different reasons why I was struggling, but my identity was tied to my career.
Yeah.
And some very surface identity issues and transactional issues that caused me to go to that place. And my encouragement to my students and people I talk to now, and my kids and my friends and my family, is like, you can't do it all yourself. You need to be able to get help. You need to have the confidence to say, I need a lifeline. That if you're working on a project, you've got to rely on your teammates and empower your teammates. It's not, and I think a lot of it also, the challenges for me were ego driven too. And learning to check your ego and have, to be a true leader is to be able to rely on others. And so that's kind of going back in a long roundabout way, Loren, to your original question, like what, there's strengths to being, resilient and being able to do stuff yourself. And that's certainly how I was raised. But also there was some setbacks with that I had to work through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being able to ask for help. So when you think about that time, were there people, tools, resources that helped you move through that time of depression? Or, what was
Yeah.
it like?
Yeah, it was depression. And so it was, I mean, we'll call it, it was me visualizing where I was supposed to be at in life, and it being derailed at the time, what I thought was derailment, and not meeting that visual expectation, and thinking that my life was a failure. Right. And not being able to recalibrate. And I think that goes back to my student conversation, and young people that I see have, and especially with social media and other things, like, visualization's great, but you also have to understand that that goal that you visualize yourself being in is probably going to have some twists and turns and perceived setbacks, perceived at the time. You have to be able to pivot and work through those things, right? And I know therapy is something that many people do and is important. And my version of therapy was a older Jewish man that was the former president of Golden Gate University, Phil Friedman. And we had gotten to know each other through my kids' Little Leagues experience. His grandkids participated, and we developed a friendship. And we just started having breakfast time and talking about everything and anything, not just with higher education and his experiences and everything that came along with that, but just life. And it became a Tuesdays with Maury moment for me.
Did you ask for that, Solly, or did it come naturally because you were together frequently?
It was, well, we had a friendship, but then I asked for it.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he leaned in, and it was one of those things where it was next level relationship building and perspective. I would also say there was another person that came into my life at the time, during that time period. Robert Paler suffered a pretty tragic neck injury. And he, during the rugby national championship, and I got to know him immediately after that injury. My nephew was playing on the field when it happened. And I visited him a day after the neck injury in the ER when he was struggling to breathe, and because he did break his neck. And this young, amazing, athletic 19-year-old that was playing for a national championship on the rugby field now was dealt with a new future of, like, maybe you'll be able to wiggle your toes. And when I met with him, from that moment, that's when our relationship started, and he was fighting for his life. He said to me, "Solly, I know you teach a class at Haas, and I'm going to take your class, and I'm going to graduate from the Haas School of Business." And he said it with such positivity. 48 hours ago, he was playing for a rugby national championship, and he was already looking forward, and he couldn't even move his toes. And he was fighting for his life. And I remember going home and telling my wife, like, I just had, like, the most amazing encounter. I think Robert's probably going to die, but if he lives, he's telling me he's taking my class.
Wow.
And you know what? He ended up taking my class, and he ended up graduating from the Haas School of Business.
Yeah.
And so I share that story, that Robert gave me perspective. Phil Friedman gave me perspective. And that's a gift that I was able, I have had the gift of some just amazing relationships in my life. Kelsey, you're one of them, of people that I've been able to learn from and grow from. And I'm forever grateful. And I still continue to experience those gifts. Kelsey knows this, tragic is the appropriate term. Mike Hamilton was my boss and friend, former athletic director at University of Tennessee, and was executive vice president at Learfield, and really was the heart and soul of our company. And he taught me how to serve others and really serve others and be vested in other people's success and how to be a champion. And that's where he got his source of joy from, is seeing everyone succeed around him. And he ended up having cancer and passing 6 months later. It was a pretty quick cancer and I was with him almost every day talking about that, right? And his commitment to his family. He adopted 5 kids, 3 from Africa. His interests outside of just his career, but in faith, his devotion for God, his service to others, and he had a clean water initiative in Africa that he was really committed to, in philanthropy, and always thinking outside of himself. And so when you have these people come into your life, and they impact you, whether it's Phil or Robert or Mike or the people I get to work with every day. Now it's a gift.
Yeah, and I feel like you honor those gifts by putting them into action and using them in your day-to-day life. So take us to kind of where you are now, and maybe a little bit about how your family has played a part in the journey and what chapter you sit in the moment.
The chapter I sit in the moment is, I love my job at Learfield. I work with amazing people. I have an amazing team. My boss, Kim Dameron, has been a longtime friend and an amazing leader. And I have the opportunity to learn from her and many others at Learfield. And so I feel very fortunate and now have the understanding of when you've got these amazing team relationships where everyone has your back, like that's special. That doesn't always happen in your career. And so when you have that, and I tell my teammates in our NIL division, like, we all genuinely enjoy connecting and being together and working on all the dynamic issues of NIL. It's like, this is special. You're going to look back on this part of your career and you're going to say, that was a great part, working with such awesome teammates. Where I'm at now, I think I am very grateful. I find myself saying thank you a lot more and understanding the power of thank you in my everyday life and in my professional life. And I think that comes from perspective. So I definitely intentional about living a life of gratitude. I have become much clearer on my personal values and what's most important to me. And, gratitude, resilience, and empathy, and integrity, and loyalty, and being authentic, those things I hold dearly. With my family, and also with my friends and professional relationships. And I think that's come with years of experience. Serving others is like, when you understand the value and what that means to really serve others, it's like next level, you're living in the matrix. And I feel that in my professional life, but also with my family and my kids. And just the value that I get from that every day is, and then in my teaching as well. I mean, I teach one course in the spring semester, a sports business course, to 80 undergraduate students at UC Berkeley. It is a gift. I always receive more than I give every semester when I do this. And to be able to impact young people in a positive way is something that I really value. It's funny. I drive to work and I see there's a crossing guard that where the grade school kids walk across the road. And there was a moment where all these kids are passing this crossing guard and there's no exchange of anything. And I'm like, when I'm able to retire, I'm going to teach and I'm going to be a crossing guard, because I am going
You're going to make all those kids say hi to you, every single one of them.
Or I have a positive engagement interaction with all those kids. But it'll be something like that. It'll be coaching and teaching, being a crossing guard. I just think there's a gift when you're able to influence people in a positive way and show kindness, say thank you, talk about things that are really important and matter, and share the life lessons that I've experienced. And I guess that's where I'm at. I mean, I don't view myself on the quote unquote back nine or phasing into the sunset in retirement. I feel like I've got a lot to give and I have a lot of productive years. What that means, we'll see.
Yeah. Solly, I'm thinking of, we have a lot of listeners. Think about this as a classroom right now. I'm curious, maybe two parts of this. I must be into two-part questions.
You are. Two-part questions.
Yeah.
Take some notes. Make sure you follow along.
Just to confuse the class, right? If this is a critical moment, let me even submit it, maybe in a crisis moment, particularly right now in higher education, what do you think are the characteristics or skills that good leadership commands given the moment? And are there things that higher ed leaders, given that you've been on both sides of the table, can learn from the corporate world that would be particularly effective given where we are right now in higher ed?
Yeah, I think this is a tough time in higher education right now, right? We're in survival mode, and how, what type of federal funding they are going to receive moving forward. And when cutbacks happen, people go into self-preservation mode. You see silos get reinforced, which isn't good. And I've seen that a number of times on university campuses. People hunker down. They don't become collaborative generally. The drawbridges go up in their respective castles and they fortify and they lock down. And now more than ever, universities need to think, how do we as a whole have stronger connectivity, and what are our mission, values, and purpose, and how are we serving our students and the greater community that we affect. And I don't think the potential can be accomplished without everyone truly working together. And I think there's policies. I was just talking to a university administrator at a pretty high level that was like, knows that there's a way to get an athletic facility built on their campus and bring some revenue generating opportunities with retail and other things. But they're nervous about stepping out and taking that project on because of the political equity and the target that would be put on them to get that done. That's unfortunate that we have that mindset, that when we need to pursue bold initiatives as a team, that administrators and leaders are nervous and have trepidation about taking on those, doing the right thing because politically it may cost them their job on campus.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of what I see starting to happen. And
people pulling
we can't
back.
have that mindset. We need to have leadership. But unfortunately, Loren, the politics on campus are real, and I think the ugliness gets amplified. You can't cut your way to excellence.
Right.
You can't.
That's right.
And I think that is a challenge every university and every university system has right now is how do we truly go into a growth mindset? And a growth mindset needs teamwork and true collaboration. Well,
good advice. And you talked earlier about, I think in your fishing story, starting the day, you've already made a contribution. And I hear in your crossing guards story, helping those, you'd be starting the day with those kids making a contribution. And so you've really made quite a contribution to us and to our listeners. And, the importance, the story you shared, the personal story, thank you, about your identity crisis and the depression you went through and how important it is to ask for help as leaders, and leadership is asking for help and finding people who can give you perspective like Phil and Robert and Mike, as you named them, which is just wonderful, I think, to give them that credit. The importance for leaders to, I think you have the title of your next book, Pull the Anchor. There's your book, Leaders Eat Last, that whole thing.
Yeah.
Pull the Anchor. There's your book title, because that's such a great metaphor for the selflessness and the hard work and I love that your dad gave you that piece of advice. Nice shout out for your dad. And you mentioned the power that's embedded in saying thank you. So I want to make sure you hear from us, and on behalf of listeners, a really profound thank you for your leadership in higher education, around higher education, and your time with us today. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll just close out. And one thing we didn't spend enough time on, and I am a passionate advocate for women leadership in higher education and in sports. And I have an extra special vested interest with Sophia, my daughter, that wants to pursue the same career as me. But Kelsey has been an inspiration and motivation. Your relationship, I've learned a ton from you at UC Berkeley, and we got the chance to work at Learfield together when you led the efforts for Michigan, and super grateful for the amazing relationship we have, and just your awesome leadership, and being able to learn from you and watch you in action.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Let's do an extra.
Oh, we're going to do an
credit,
extra credit.
I don't have an extra credit though. Do you?
Well, I was thinking, Solly brought up that he's in a moment where he's got like the team that's like the dream team, which it makes me think, like, have you ever had the dream team? Is there a moment in your career where you're like, this is the team?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like, and I don't know whether I'm just biased because I was there, but there was an era at the University of Michigan where I just feel like we got so much done. We had so many wins, not without setbacks or challenges or political, things, but there were a group of us that were kind of all there at the same time, most of whom are gone now, retired, taking new jobs, whatever, that I think the chemistry was just fantastic. We laughed a lot. We had each other's backs. We got capital projects approved. We managed through some really difficult things that happened. And I could probably bookend it with the years and the people, but I do think about that. And I have even talked with one of those persons a little bit about that as an era. At least for me in my career, that was an era. And this person responded it was for them too, that, yeah, that was a moment? That few years was a moment. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a good solid 3 to 4 years, especially at NACIS, that it was just like, I think the words that resonate with me that you said, it's like we laughed a lot, we worked really hard, we got things done, we trusted each other, and we worked at that relationship to be able to do that stuff together. And it just felt kind of amazing. And it's one of those things, I think when you're in it, it's good, but I think after you're like, oh, that was real good. And I don't know that it's meant to last forever. That's something that I'm sitting with.
Was that a chemistry that you intentionally tried to construct either through hiring or staff development, or was it just the magic of these people at this time in this universe?
Yes. I think all of that.
Both.
I mean, I think it takes intentionality as a leader to bring tools and resources and make the time to develop that team dynamic and that culture, how you're spending your time, the kind of conversations you're willing to have with each other, how you're willing to show up. And then it takes the people have to do the work too. Right. And so I think that's where then people get to choose if they're staying on the train or not.
Yeah.
Get on the train or get off.
And then they get to choose if they're going to reciprocate.
That's right.
Which is the chemistry.
That's right.
And reciprocity is an important thing, as a leader and a father.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had leaders for whom I'm reporting, and they're giving something of themselves to me that is a moment for me. I can either reciprocate with that, even if it's a little uncomfortable, so that we can grow together, or not, because it's uncomfortable, in which case then some of that chemistry, I think, just doesn't come. So showing up for each other that way is important.
Yeah. Well, here's to more people showing up for each other.
Indeed.
Campus Confidential is presented by Compass Group, produced by Corey Inscoe, with your hosts Kelsey Harmon Finn and Loren Rullman.